There are a lot of things business professionals obsess over that matter. Strategy matters, execution matters, follow-up matters, positioning. Positioning matters. Just like product matters, leadership matters, process matters, but there is one skill sitting quietly underneath almost all of it, and most people either underestimate it or dismiss it because it sounds too basic. That skill is conversation, more specifically, small talk. And for some people, the minute they hear that phrase, they think of awkward networking events, stale coffee, forced introductions, and pointless chatter with people they were hoping to avoid in the first place. Fair enough. A lot of people hear small talk and think shallow. They think fake. They think filler. But that is not what good small talk is. Good small talk is not fake. Good small talk is the front door to trust. It is the bridge between stranger and relationship. It is the first layer of comfort before somebody gives you the real question, the real concern, the real opportunity, the real objection, the real need. And if you are in sales, building a business, leading a team, growing a brand, or trying to create opportunities in the real world, that matters more than most people realize. Because in competitive environments, people do not choose the smartest option. They choose who they trust. They choose who feels human. They choose who makes them feel seen, understood, and comfortable enough to keep the conversation going. That is why this matters. This is not a soft skill in the disposable sense. This is a real business skill, a relationship skill, a trust building skill, a deal operating skill. Because if you get better at this, your meetings get better. Your first impressions get better. Your sales conversations get better. Your networking gets better. Your follow-up gets better. And maybe most importantly, your confidence. That's right, your confidence gets better. So today I want to talk about how to get better at small talk. Not so you can become fake, not so you can become louder, not so you can turn into one of those unbearable people who read half a book on networking and now act like every room is their stage. I want to talk about small talk as a practical business tool because the people who know how to create real connection through simple conversation have an industry advantage. I'm Dustin Owen, and this is The D.O. Show. They don't teach this shit in school, but they should. I'm Dustin Owen, and for the past 20 years, the mortgage industry has been my classroom. I've helped over 2,000 families become homeowners, built a $1 billion mortgage operation from scratch, and earned my way into the top 1% of income earners worldwide. Along the way, I became a real estate investor, a business owner, and have invested in over 20 tech startups, even hitting a 20x return on one of my investments. This isn't theory, it's experience. Welcome to The D.O. Show, where I teach the lessons life taught me the hard way. The first thing you need to understand is this. Small talk is not about being interesting. It's about being interested. That sounds obvious, but most people still miss it. They walk into conversations trying to perform, trying to sound sharp, trying to stay perfect, trying to prove their value too early, trying to make sure they come across the right way. And because they are so focused on themselves, they end up doing the exact opposite of what creates connection. I know this all too well because for most of my career, I was that guy. And still today, I got to be honest, sometimes I'm that guy. They either dominate the interaction or they lock up inside. Neither works. Most people enjoy talking to people who make them feel comfortable. People who ask thoughtful questions, people who listen, people who are present, people who make them feel like they matter. That is why curiosity is such a cheat code. Curiosity takes pressure off. You do not need to impress people nearly as much as you think. You need to understand them. That is what creates momentum in conversation. If you are an entrepreneur meeting a potential partner, a salesperson meeting a prospect, a founder at an event, or a leader trying to build stronger relationships, the person in front of you will almost always respond better to real curiosity than polished performance. So if small talk feels awkward for you, stop trying to be impressive and start trying to be curious. Curiosity is lighter, it's easier, it gives you a better direction. Because the second thing you need to understand is that good small talk usually starts with observation. It's not brilliance, it's observation. What is already there? What is the setting? What is the shared context? What did they just say? Where are they from? How did they get to where they are? What are they involved in? Who introduced you? What is obvious enough to ask without forcing anything? Too many people think they need some magical one-liner. They do not. They need awareness. If you're at an event, ask what brought them there. If someone mentions they recently moved, ask where from. If somebody says they have been in the business a long time, ask how they got into it. If someone references a project, ask how it came together. You do not need genius, you need attention. And this is where a lot of professionals miss easy opportunities. They hear details and move right past them. But details are where the connection lives. Someone says they moved from Chicago. You can just nod and move on, or you can say, no kidding, what brought you here? That one extra question changes the whole direction of the conversation. Now you're learning. Now you're connecting. Now you are gathering. Now you are building comfort. And that comfort matters because trust rarely begins at full depth. It usually begins with a few small signals that tell the other person you are paying attention. The next thing that matters is learning how to keep the other person going. This is where a lot of people freeze. They ask one question, the person answers, then the audience goes silent. And suddenly their brain starts spinning in circles. Now what? Well, simple. Use bridges. How did that happen? What was that like? Tell me more about that. No kidding. It's interesting. Oh, wow. These are not filler phrases. These are tools. They buy you time. They show interest. They invite more detail. They help move the conversation from surface to substance. And the best part is you do not need a giant vocabulary or some complicated framework. You just need a few natural phrases you're comfortable using. Because the goal is not to interrogate people. The goal is to create room. That is a huge difference. A lot of people who are bad at conversation ask questions like they're collecting evidence. Good conversationalists ask questions like they are opening doors. That is what you want. If somebody tells you something meaningful, do not rush to make it about you. Do not immediately jump to your version of their story. Stay with them a little longer. Let them expand. That is where connection deepens. And this matters more than people think in business. A client, prospect, partner, or heck, even a peer is rarely deciding only whether you are competent. They're also deciding whether you are someone they want to talk to again, someone they trust enough to bring into bigger conversations, someone they feel comfortable opening up to when the conversation gets more important. That comfort does not come from slickness. It comes from presence. Another thing that matters here is understanding what confidence in conversation is all about. A lot of people think confidence means being polished, witty, dominant, or effortlessly charismatic. It doesn't. Real conversation confidence is much simpler. It is being comfortable enough with yourself that you do not spend the whole interaction monitoring yourself. Because self-monitoring, it kills the presence. It kills the mood. The moment you start thinking, do I sound weird? Was that dumb? Am I talking too much? Should I say something else? Do they like me? You're no longer in the conversation. You are in your own head. And that is why so many intelligent, capable people come off awkward. Not because they're bad with people, because they are trapped inside themselves while trying to talk to people. A better mindset is just this. Most people are just people. That sounds simple, sure, but it helps you think better. The high performer in the room, it's a person. The founder with the big company, that's a real person. The senior executive, guess what? It's a person. The investor, they're a person. The influencer, unfortunately, still a person. Titles distort things if you let them. They make you think the other person is operating on some elevated plane where everything they say matters more and everything you say is being judged. Usually, not true. Most people are worried about themselves too. Most people have insecurities too. Most people are hoping not to feel awkward too. Once you really understand that, conversations, man, they get way easier. People know you are not walking into every interaction trying to win approval from some superior being. You're just talking to another human. And that shift matters a lot in sales as well as entrepreneurship. Because if you walk into every conversation feeling lower than the person in front of you, your tone changes. You become hesitant, unclear, apologetic. You stop speaking with grounded confidence. But when you remember your value or stay present, you become easier to trust. Not because you're louder, because you are steadier. Another important idea is this: use conversation to discover commonality, not to manufacture it. People can feel fake rapport. They know when you're reaching. They know when you're trying too hard to force a connection. And as my kids have told me, Dad, don't be a tryhard. They know when you are pretending to have more in common than you do. That is why commonality should be found, not forced. When it's forced, it's a fraud. Maybe you both came from similar industries. Maybe you both, are parents. Maybe you both built from scratch. Maybe you both know the same person. Maybe you both care about growth, leadership, freedom, discipline, health, or building something meaningful. You do not need a deep, dramatic connection in the first conversation. You just need one real point of overlap. Just one. That's enough. And once you find it, do not overwork it. Let it breathe. That one point of shared context often creates a much more natural path into follow-up later, because now the next conversation has a thread. Now you remember something real. Now the relationship is slightly more human, and that matters. One of the easiest ways to improve your conversational ability is to ask better work questions. Most people ask lazy work questions, such as, what do you do? Look, it's fine, but it often leads to generic answers. A better move is asking how they got into it, how long they've been doing it, what they did before, what are they even focused on right now? Or I should say, what are they focused on lately? What changes they are seeing in their world? Those kinds of questions produce story, not just a title. And story is where the useful stuff lives. Story tells us how someone thinks, what they value, what shaped them, what they are proud of, what they are working through, what matters in business. Because once you understand someone's story, your next questions get smarter. Your follow-up gets more relevant. And believe it or not, we all have a follow-up game, and it needs to be tight. And the relationship stops feeling generic. This also helps you talk about your own work more effectively. A lot of people either describe their job too vaguely or too mechanically. They say what they do in category terms instead of outcome terms. That's a total swing and miss. A stronger way to talk about your work is in the language of impact, not your title, not your role, but the result you help create. That makes you easier to understand. It also makes people more likely to ask a second question. And that's the point. You do not need to dump your whole professional identity into the first answer. You need to create curiosity as well as offer a little clarity. And one more thing, the best small talk eventually stops being small. That's the real purpose of it, isn't it? Not to stay shallow forever, but to create enough comfort that the conversation can become real. That is where honesty matters. Not oversharing, not performing authenticity, not turning every conversation into a therapy session because modern people love taking a useful idea and making it unbearable. I mean measured openness, the willingness to say something real, to admit challenge, to share perspective, to sound like a human being after all, not just a polished role, because trust accelerates when people feel like they actually have met you, not just on surface. And this matters in every business relationship. People do not just buy expertise, they buy confidence, clarity, trust. They buy the feeling that the person across them is solid. That feeling often starts with simple conversation handled well. So if you want to get better at this, here's the practical takeaway. Stop treating small talk like filler. Treat it like skill. Practice open conversations. Practice noticing details. Practice asking the obvious next question. Practice staying curious longer. Practice listening without racing to your next point. Practice making your work easier to understand, remembering one thing about the person in front of you. Practice turning first contact into human connection, because people who can do that consistently have an edge. They have an edge in sales and leadership and entrepreneurship and partnerships and opportunity, as well as in trust. And trust is still one of the most valuable currencies in business. If this episode hit home, do me a favor, subscribe to this channel because this show is built for people who want to think better, communicate better, build stronger relationships, and win at a higher level. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs it, and keep tuning in. And I look forward to catching you on the next DO show.